Hey, I'm up in Kirkland right now. It's raining. We're up here so I can get a haircut. And pretty much this morning I've just been running errands. So let's head over to the shop. I'm gonna get my haircut and we'll get on with our day. Alright, cool. Just got my haircut. Gonna go try to figure out some lunch now. Pretty clean. So I go to the same lady all the time. Her name's Raylene. Does a really super good job. And yeah, let's try to figure out lunch. All right. Hey, back at the apartment. Got some pad thai, got my Thai tea, and I think the rest of the day I'm mostly chilling. I gotta hit up the gym today, and I should probably start packing. But other than that, today should be pretty chill. So yeah, just gonna eat my lunch right now and then catch up with you guys after. Late. Okay, what I wanted to talk about in today's video primarily is money. And in terms of saving, spending, kind of like budgeting, and like kind of what the steps I took were to get better about that, because it's definitely something I really struggled with for a while, was trying to be better about the money I did have and kind of like doing my best to avoid accruing debt. There's this flow chart I'm going to put on the screen right now. And so really, let's just look at this top row. It's kind of like the building blocks to getting to a better place with money. And so the first phase is budgeting and reducing expenses. And this is the part where you want to set realistic goals. So I know a lot of the times people are like, oh yeah, if you avoid getting that $5 cup of coffee every day and you just don't eat out as much, of course you're going to have more money that way. But what if going to coffee shops is just something you really enjoy doing? And like being in that kind of environment puts you in a good mindset, or maybe you just really, really like trying different kinds of food. Like, why should you have to cut that completely out if that's something that like gives you satisfaction, you know? So that's why there's the part that says for it to be a realistic goal, because obviously you shouldn't do that every day, but you also shouldn't just completely cut it out. Okay, so this next part is, I think, really, really important, and that's building an emergency fund. And just knowing that you have some allotment of money that you're just never going to touch unless you really, really need it, I think is super important, because really, you never know what's going to happen. And if you can be in a situation where you have some money set aside for that kind of scenario, it's going to help you. And so if you ever run into any kind of sticky situation, and one of the things you don't have to worry about is completely having the money to pay for it, it'll make it like that much easier. And I'm sure there's going to be like other things you have to deal with around that situation, but at least the money, or at least some of it, won't be what you're worrying about. We'll go into more detail about like how much you should have in an emergency fund, because it does vary from person to person, and kind of like how you want to continually build that up even after, say, you meet your first goal with it. And then step 2 is employer-sponsored matching funds. So this is anything where it's like, if you put X amount of dollars away, your company will match some percent of it. Again, we'll get into more detail about that later in the flow chart. Step 3, this is all about paying off debts and kind of not letting it overwhelm you, and like different approaches you can have to paying those off. Followed by step 4, which is all about retirement savings. I'm not going to go into too much detail about all the different types of things you can do for savings for retirement, but we'll talk about a few things. Step 5, increase the amount you're saving towards retirement. And then step 6, save for other goals and advanced methods. We're not going to go into the advanced methods at all, but definitely the save for other goals would be like buying a house, buying a car, buying a dog, and like going on trips. I'm going to go back to the first thing I said, where the realistic goals thing is, if one of your goals is to go on a vacation once a year, you don't have to wait until step 6 to set aside the money for that. That can be part of your budget, where you're setting aside a small amount, and you want that to build up over time so that you can take that vacation to Hawaii or New York or wherever it may be. Okay, so step 0, the first part for this, the only way you're going to be able to kind of structure everything else is if you figure out what your monthly expenses are. And so we're going to start that by creating a budget. And so these first 4 boxes in this row are all things that kind of are going to build your budget and what you need to pay off monthly. So the first thing would be paying for your housing situation. If you want to, and your situation permits, obviously living at home and not having to pay rent like your parents or something, that's going to save you a bunch of money. Like, to be straight up, for this apartment in downtown Bellevue, I'm personally paying like $1,400 on rent alone. And it's super steep, but we budgeted around it to make sure that this was feasible. And obviously, it's a lot, and it could be less, but it's kind of like part of having a goal to go do something, and then knowing that the rent we were going to pay was going to be really high, and accepting that fact so that we could have just this like experience that we're having right now. Next, food and groceries. You need food, you need groceries, obviously. I split it between the money I'm going to spend on groceries specifically, and then I have a separate section where it's like, okay, this is the amount I have allotted to eating out during the month. Pay essential items, so that's day-to-day things you need. Gotta pay for power, water, electricity, internet, for sure. This pay income earning expenses is more so if you're an Uber driver and your job requires you to drive around all the time, you got to pay for maintenance of the car, you got to pay for gas, and all those kind of things. So anything that you need to do your job, that's kind of what falls into that category. Okay, the next box is healthcare. Obviously, this helps a lot if you have an employer who provides a healthcare plan that's good for you. And if not, that can get expensive for sure. And then the last part of the budget is making the minimum payments on all your debts and loans. So this is making those payments monthly that you need to pay off your loan in the amount of time that you initially agreed to. So kind of what I also put into this section. Oh, let me scroll. There's the pay healthcare thing right here. My picture was covering it and I didn't realize, my bad. Okay, so the thing that's not really shown here is the spending you do that's kind of like outside that budget. And so I allocate monthly like a certain amount of money that I can spend on kind of just like things I might want to buy, you know? And that way I know I can go buy things and just like not feel like I'm not going to be able to pay rent or something, or not going to be able to buy groceries. So that's like the personal budget or whatever. And so we have that. And then now going on to the step 1. And now going on to step 1 is building a small emergency fund. And so I agree with this flowchart. I think having $1,000 in an emergency fund is like a great first step. That was kind of like my first goal, was to have $1,000 in an emergency fund. And the thing with this savings is, like I said in the beginning, it's money you don't touch. It's money that is there if you need it, not because you want it. Eventually, you definitely want to build that up. Like what I did was first I got it to 1,000, then I got to 3 months worth of spending saved for an emergency, for a situation where, say I get laid off and I'm unemployed and I got bills to pay, then I had that money to rely on to get me through. So when I was in between jobs before moving up here, I was using that fund to try and pay my rent and all my other expenses that I had. And then eventually I got it to a point where I had 6 months worth of monthly expenses saved up. So in case, who knows what could happen, I had like money kind of just like in the back pocket, you know? Okay, moving on. So This step I think is nice to take advantage of if you're in the situation too. This is where if your employer offers you like a 401k and then you can put in money towards your retirement and they match a certain amount, then that's great. But something I want to like preface this with is if your company is like, oh, we'll match 5% of your savings, but you don't vest fully until you stay 5 years or stay 3 years. I know this is kind of bad to say, but I feel like with the way people are with jobs now, we don't see it as like, oh, I'm for sure going to be here for the next 5 years. Like, if you plan on not staying there, then I can see you wanting to skip this step and allocating your money to other places. Okay, so that moves us on to the next step, and that's paying off debts. So could be anything from like student loans, car loans, personal loans, anything. And I kind of see this as the most important step because whenever you have any kind of debt, it's just like not a good feeling. So whenever I do accrue anything, I try to pay it off as quickly as I can, just because it's like a huge weight on your shoulders, you know? And it's like you're making money, but you're not really, because really you got to go pay a bunch of stuff off. So there's two methods they talk about, and one is the avalanche method and the other one is the snowball method. And really it's personal choice which one you do. Avalanche method is like you pay a huge portion off at a time and you just pay it off in chunks, whereas snowball method is more like paying off little pieces at a time. So for me, I prefer getting rid of my debts as quickly as I can opposed to picking away at them incrementally. But for some people that may not work, so do whatever's best for you. Okay, this next part is what I was talking about earlier, where you want to increase that emergency fund from $1,000 or 1 month's living expenses up to 3 to 6 months. And this is just like, if you're in a situation, you need the money, it's there, but it's not for you to go to Starbucks and grab a coffee. You know what I mean? And then it just loops back to maybe lower interest debt, but same. Okay, I'm gonna post the link to this flowchart in the description, but for the most part, everything else below, it talks about different retirement savings plans you can get into and other savings methods and everything. But I don't feel as knowledgeable about those kind of things, so I don't want to like tell you what to do or anything. So I definitely recommend that you research it on your own, but hopefully everything I've talked about kind of gives you like a good starting point to where you can start working towards being more in control of your finances, giving you peace of mind to know that you're in an okay place. And I think one of the last things I would say is don't worry too much about where other people are with their finances, because everyone's situation is different person to person, and really the expenses we have all differ. So just because the internet says you should have X amount of money saved by whatever age doesn't mean anything, as long as you can be honest with yourself to know that the choices you're making are what's bringing you satisfaction, and you're slowly building up whatever savings you want to have for later in life. All right, so I rambled a lot. I don't know if this is really going to have helped anyone, but hopefully if you had no idea where to start, then that this will have given you a good idea of kind of steps you can take to start getting there. But whatever your goals are, good luck with them. You got it. All right, take it easy. See you guys in the next one.